Welcome to the Rising for Women podcast. I'm your host, Lisa Merlo-Booth, and I believe the world would be changed for women when we change how we walk in it. So each week, we're going to have hard conversations. We're going to explore new options. Some of them are going to be hard options, and we're going to have some real, straight talk. We're going to do that because I have faith that women can handle it. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Rising Podcast. I'm Lisa Merlo-Booth, your host, and with me today are Dee Marcotte and Arlene Newman. Welcome, you guys.
Hey.
It's so great to have you. So today, one of the things we're going to talk about is women and self-esteem. And we're going to kind of look at how are women struggling with self-esteem? Where are we getting stuck? How is it impacting our lives? And when we talk about self-esteem, there's so many different ways to talk about it. It's kind of where do women struggle with owning their worth? Where do they struggle with kind of stepping into their power? What's going on that we doubt ourselves? There's so many different things. And so today we're going to talk about, what's going on with women and self-esteem. Why is it that we are not able to own our worth rather than forever trying to prove our worth? What's going on with us? So Dee and Arlene, you guys see this every day in your practices. If you're like me, you see it every day in our world, with our families, with our friends, with, our neighbors. It's just everywhere. So let's talk for a moment around women and self-esteem. What are some of your thoughts just about what's the problem with self-esteem? Like, how would you guys even define self-esteem, and how do you think it shows up with women?
Well, I think it's the hard part is like, what is the problem? And it's kind of like, it's hard to say the problem is and put a word to it, because as we were talking about it a little bit earlier, we can describe it some, but it's really hard to go, this is self-esteem.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. Mm-hmm.
Well, that's so true. One of the things that might be helpful, just to give kind of a blanket description of healthy self-esteem, because we throw that term out all the time. And I think a lot of people don't know, what the hell is it, right? Mm-hmm. And so I would say, Pia Mellody has the best description, I think, of what healthy self-esteem is. And she describes healthy self-esteem as the ability to hold yourself in warm regard despite your imperfections. It's the idea that I'm enough and I matter. And despite your imperfections is really tough for women, because we're always trying to be perfect. But the key part of self-esteem is you're enough and you matter even though you make mistakes. And your worth is exactly equal to every other person's worth on this entire planet, regardless of what job they have, how much money they make, what their race is, what their gender is, what their sexual orientation is. All of that is irrelevant. You are absolutely equal to everybody. You're not better than anyone else. You're not less than anybody else. So healthy self-esteem is your ability to own your worth and to know that your worth is equal. And I think all of us experience this in our practices, in our lives, and like I said, in our neighborhoods even, that women have a hard time just owning that and just feeling as though we are absolutely equal to everybody else. What do you think?
We have trouble not judging ourselves. We constantly judge ourselves. We do compare and contrast. We do that. And it's a practice that I don't think we were taught to practice healthy self-esteem. If you don't have it, then most women just try to get in all these ways that are not very effective long-term. And I think to learn how to practice healthy self-esteem by reminding yourself and being aware of all these things that we do to demean ourselves and to doubt ourselves, I think that's a very important practice for us.
Yeah, I think it's important to realize that on any given day, no human being has healthy self-esteem every single moment of every day. It ebbs and flows, And so that ebb and flow is okay, right? Men and women, it doesn't matter, that's okay. However, if it's you're feeling less than, most of the time, or you're feeling less than more often than you're feeling equal and like healthy, like you have healthy self-esteem and your worth, then that's a problem. And in my experience, women more often than not are not feeling same as, they're not feeling equally worthy. They're doubting themselves and questioning themselves, and so they struggle with it.
Yeah, I think all of those ideas of like we should have been raised with self-esteem being something that's in here, not dependent on all of out there. The problem is that's not what we learn in female culture, with the patriarchy, with sexism. We don't learn that. We learn you got to make sure they're happy, for us to feel like we're okay. And that starts from the get-go, I think, and is ill-placed.
Yeah, so let's go there. That's a great comment. So why is it so many women struggle with healthy self-esteem? Where the hell are we learning this? And so Dee, you just named a few places. You just talked about patriarchy and what we're taught. And I remember growing up, watching my mom, kind of, what would I say? Placate my dad, over accommodate for my dad. She did everything in the family. She had 5 kids and she
Lisa, we had the same mother.
Right. Right. I think, many of us had that mom, and they had that mom. And so, and what, watching my mom stand up to my father never happened.
Never happened. I'm telling you, we had the same mom. Never happened.
Yeah.
Never happened. She would slam doors. That would be her way of letting us all know that she wasn't too happy with us, but never stand up directly. Never. I never saw it.
No.
No.
Yeah, my grandmother, she didn't do that. She would just burn dinner.
She would what?
Burn dinner.
The passive aggressive way of doing it.
That's how she handled that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so you can imagine, how many little girls all across the world are watching their moms do this, and their moms who watched their moms, right? And grandmothers, and it's like this legacy. And, so we certainly didn't witness it. I didn't witness very many women in my life growing up who were strong women who really could, speak up directly, like a direct conversation, or tell a man no right in front of people. Like that, I didn't see that happening.
No.
And there was a way, in my growing up, and even today I see it all the time, mansplaining, and the men would doubt the women and the women would doubt themselves. And so growing up, you tended to doubt the women because that's like all that you saw. And then you would doubt yourself because you're like, well, maybe I don't quite know this. Maybe let me like ask him. Let me like double check. And so I think our what we see is has totally taught us that we're not nearly as equal. And then patriarchy, is everywhere. What do you guys see with patriarchy?
What don't I see with patriarchy?
Yeah, really, it's like, where do we begin? It's our world. It's really our world. And how we treat it, how we treat ourselves, how we think about ourselves, how we try to feel good about ourselves is through that lens.
And so people who are like, what the hell is this big thing about patriarchy? Why is everybody talking about patriarchy? Like,
I wish everybody was talking about it. Not enough people are talking about it.
Yeah, I think more are now. Yeah, but I think you're right. Let's get into the just little descriptions. Like, what kind of messages do we think patriarchy has sent women that directly impacts their self-esteem and sense of self? Like on a day-to-day, occasion.
Don't stand up, don't have a voice, don't be angry, don't do better than a man, don't make men uncomfortable.
Your emotionals are due to your hormones.
Yes.
They don't really have any validity or any value.
Oh, you're upset. It must be that time of the month.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Why can't you just be logical? That's the answer to everything.
You're too sensitive.
Mm-hmm.
Don't be a nag.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of messages for women that their worth is in their looks. And that's on every magazine you look at. How to Please a Man is on all of these things. I'm really aging myself now, but do you guys remember that commercial? I can bring home the bacon, da-na-na-na, fry it up in the pan, and never, never, never let you forget you're a man. You don't remember that? Am I
I don't
singing?
remember that.
Totally
Oh my
remember
gosh.
that. Yes.
You don't? Oh, so
I missed that. I missed that one.
it was a commercial, and it was this housewife.
Mm-hmm.
And so she's like, I can bring home the bacon. What was it? Yeah. So basically I can go shopping, I can cook for you, and I can be sexual with you and never let you forget you're a man. Because I'm a woman, because that's what my worth is. And that was like, I remember that commercial all the time. And we used to sing it, and like, it was funny. But that was years ago. But even today, I think that the magazines have gotten bolder and even more so. How to please your man, how to get a man to love you, how to get a man to fall for you. And it's all these messages that if you don't have a man, you're not worthy.
You're not worth it.
And that's patriarchy, right? You need a man to take care of you. You need a man to have worth. You need a man to be seen as, legit, all these things.
Mm-hmm. Well, and then from that, then it's kind of like that, what I was talking about, like, well, then the self-esteem has to come out here rather than in here. And so now I have to figure out what to do to keep all this going.
Right. To keep it coming, right? To keep it coming. It needs to be constantly reinforced because it doesn't really land.
Yeah.
Right.
Because it's not really about you. It's very superficial.
Mm-hmm.
Right. It's about what other people think of you. It's about whether they love you, whether they like you. It's that externally based self-esteem.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So you're like a rat on a wheel, always trying to get it.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're always at risk of losing it. Like if you have if you look bad one day, or if your hair looks bad, or you're not dressed well, you feel insecure. Like,
right.
Or when you think,
will I lose my status? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I was going to say, if you think about the idea of like that whole idea of appearance and that sort of thing, that, I mean, if you just think about the idea that an older man with a younger woman
Yes.
is there, like men, like that's really cool. An older woman with a younger man is a cougar.
Yes.
Not cool at all, right? Not
What?
cool.
Like that's patriarchy.
Right.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's everywhere. It's so subtle and so not so subtle.
Right.
Well, we don't see it because it's like the air that we breathe, right? We don't see the air that we breathe.
Yeah. Well, Arlene, you and I were talking a little earlier before we started the podcast that I said, in 2016, like before this last election, when I was asking women about, I was talking to them and self-esteem and finding their voice, and women time and time again were like, I totally, my mom taught me to use my voice. I don't have a problem with that. I'm a strong woman. I believe in myself. And I was like, that's so fascinating because in my offices, I'm not seeing that. Right. Mm-hmm. And so then the election happened and I feel like a greater consciousness happened because now more and more women are acknowledging like, wow, I'm struggling a little bit. But really, I think many women believe that they have healthy self-esteem. I think many women wouldn't identify as struggling with self-esteem. Right. But then I see them in their lives and I see them, ducking from saying no. I see them ducking from actually asking for what they directly want. I see them walking on eggshells around their spouses and not wanting to set people off or staying with somebody who had 15 affairs and, figuring, well, maybe it's something about me, or maybe I can, if I have sex with him enough, I'll keep him. And all those little things that women may not tag as self-esteem, but it is. Right. It's. Go ahead, Dee.
Yeah, that's what underlies it. Sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, like, that made me think about the fact, as we were talking about all of these things about, like women will say, no, I speak up for myself and this and that and the other thing. And then they'll be in my office and they'll say, well, you know, he blah, blah, blah. And I'll be like, okay, well, what did you do?
Yeah.
And they're kind of like, well, I just tried to not make him mad.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
I tried to explain. I tried to so doing something that still is that being accommodating and adapting,
Right.
which is the same thing.
Instead of and so like healthy self-esteem in that situation would look very different. It's not about how do I calm him down? How do I make him not upset? It's really about, is that behavior okay or not okay for me? And if somebody's treating you poorly, it's not okay. You don't walk on eggshells around them. You set a limit on it. And women have a very hard time with that because they can yell and scream, but actually saying that's not okay. And if that happens again, this is what I'm going to do. No, women struggle with that all the time. And that is about self-esteem. That's
right.
also about, I think that's also about patriarchy. Like women are taught to fear the men, and men are often taught to move in power over. So they get scary and women get scared, and it's that whole thing. But when you are not standing up for yourself around being treated well, that's a self-esteem issue. That's a self-esteem issue.
Yep.
Right. So Lisa, so what you're saying, which I think is really important, is that women suffer from lack of self-esteem, but they don't identify it as the issue.
Yes.
There are all these manifestations of low self-esteem that go on that we as women have not kind of identified that this is really what underlies it, and this is really what we have to deal with at its core.
And what a great segue. Let's talk about, so what do women do when they don't have healthy self-esteem? How does that manifest itself? In their job?
Well, certainly emotionally, they suffer with depression and anxiety, self-doubt, insecurities, eating disorders.
I would say that's the cost of it. What do you think the behaviors are that they're doing? Right? So they settle for bad relationships. They shrink instead of standing up. You know, like what are all the things we see in our offices that women are doing day to day, like putting the needs of others before themselves constantly?
Yeah, accommodating.
They
become very caretakers and codependents. They
stop right there for a sec. What's codependent? A lot of people hear that word. How would you describe codependent?
I describe codependence as focusing on taking care of the other and disregarding yourself in that formula.
Yeah,
putting yourself aside and trying to do everything that you know how to do to take care of the other person.
Yeah.
So it could be your children, it could be your husband, it could be whomever you happen to be in that kind of relationship with.
Yeah. Putting their needs and wants above your own.
Yes.
Yeah.
And not even realizing it, because it becomes a need to take care of the other person.
Well, and that's where socialization comes in, because that's how women are trained. Be the nurturers, be the giver, put other people first, put your stuff, be selfless. Yeah.
Yeah, I like the term, the culture of female service.
Ooh.
That we have been taught that our job is to be of service all the time. And then we're doing what we're supposed to do. And if we would have any amount of no, or even I can't do that right now, I'll do it later, like even that is not considered okay in the culture of female service.
Right.
And the guilt that accompanies not accommodating that idea.
Right.
Women suffer tremendous guilt whenever they try to step away from that role.
Yeah, it's so fascinating. There's so many. We feel guilty if we're like stepping away from it. We feel guilty if we're not. We feel guilty if we're not moms. We feel guilty if we're like not stay-at-home moms. We feel guilty if we're. I mean, there's like, oh my gosh.
We're very guilt-ridden, aren't we? As a gender, really guilt-ridden.
Right? I thought it was just a Catholic thing. I think it's a
I don't think so.
yeah, it's just part of the female condition, I think.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and we need to get out of that guilt. We need to realize that we have inherent worth and we can stand up for what we want and we can go after what, you know, what we desire without feeling guilty about it. And we cannot do things that our culture, that our socialization, that patriarchy, that our parents told us we had to do. That's a hard leap though.
It
And
is a hard leap.
yeah. And I think as a result, women beat themselves up all the time for not being enough.
Well, and we're not enough also, I think, in the idea that we have been taught through all of those things you just listed, that we're supposed to be responsible for the feelings of everybody around us. And whether or not you know, I can think of all the times of like, oh, well, we went out to dinner. I picked the restaurant and he didn't like it.
Right.
Oh,
It's my
So
fault.
it's
Oh
my
my
fault.
God. Oh
It's
my
my fault.
God.
That he didn't
That
have a good
happens
time.
all the time.
And I'm
Right.
like, no. You know,
Oh, I don't want to pick the restaurant because I don't want to be blamed for picking a bad restaurant, right?
exactly. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
God.
And so I think that adds to that whole kind of guilt kind of ideas like, well, if they don't like it and I have to be responsible for them liking or not, then, well, like you said, then I'll just stop having an opinion.
right. And I think often women are indecisive anyway. We second guess ourselves. We worry. We don't want to make a decision and upset one person, or we don't want to make the wrong decision. I think women struggle with perfectionism all the time. That's like, we got to have everything together and we got to look good while we're doing it. And we got to get the attentions of everybody else. And it's a very, very tough spot for women. And when you're under that, like, you know, magnifying glass, there's no way that you're going to live up to it. And then you feel bad about it.
Yeah.
You know? And so it's just it's a tough, you know, it's a tough spot to be in. And I think all of these, when you're going for perfectionism, that's a self-esteem issue. I don't know if you guys have heard this. I've heard so many women about relationships. If their boyfriends don't like them, or their boyfriends or their husbands cheat on them, and this is more specifically in heterosexual relationships, in my experience, when they're leaving, the women are, what's wrong with me? I'm not lovable. Maybe he's a jerk. Maybe he's not meant to, you know, you're not meant to be together. I mean, there's, and some of these men that they're saying they're not lovable about are treating them so horrifically, but yet the women still, you know, blame themselves and question themselves. And, you know, maybe if I were lovable, maybe he would have stayed. Maybe he wouldn't have cheated on me all these times. Maybe he wouldn't have, you know, talked down to me so much, all of these things. And it's like, no, if you believed in yourself, there are good guys out there. But when you think you're less than, you're not going to pick the good guys. And then you're going to be blaming yourself because they're not good. They're just not good guys.
And I think we've been talking about kind of there's that piece of the guilt and who we pick because we don't think a lot about ourselves. And what part of what goes along with the not thinking of our own self-worth is the idea of, even if we get positive feedback, we brush it off. We're like, oh yeah, but that's just,
Right.
oh, you'd
That's
say that
right.
to anybody.
That's right.
Oh, I was just being nice. It was like, it's not something to notice.
Right.
It's always, we're so taught that we should stay invisible and not be noticed.
Yes.
So we don't want to be, so don't notice me.
Right.
So it's hard to take even the positive piece in.
Right. So what's the cost of all this? I mean, you know, why not be nurturing? Why not put the needs and wants of everybody else above ourselves? Why not strive for perfection? Why, you know, so we doubt ourselves, so we think other people are better, you know, it
makes us feel terrible. We feel bad. We suffer.
Yeah.
We suffer. We're unhappy. We're miserable.
Yeah.
We don't reach for the stars. We don't live up to our full potential. We teach our daughters to do the same.
Yes, we pass on that toxic legacy for generation to generation to generation. And then, yeah.
I love to ask my patients this question. I would say to them, what would you want your daughter to be in a relationship like you're in?
Yeah.
And boy, does that stop them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I wouldn't want that for my kid.
Right. Well,
Is
and
it okay for you?
yeah. Well, and some women will say, well, they don't see it. We hide it from them. They don't see it.
Right.
Oh man, kids are scarily intuitive.
They see and know. They're like little. They're like
Spongy.
little. I don't know. They have antennas out everywhere. They pick
Yeah.
up everything. I always tell this to my patients. So if you think you can hide anything from your kid, you can forget about it. They know everything.
Yeah.
So don't even bother.
That's so true. Yeah, I think that some of the other cost is we settle for really unhappy relationships, and we're in unhealthy relationships. And I've seen, not to mention, depression, anxiety. I've had women come into my office post breast cancer diagnosis, and they've said in front of their husbands, I have no doubt that the cause of this has been my marriage, and I will no longer be settling in this marriage. It's like, wow. Now let me just do a caveat. There are many women with breast cancer, and it's not about their relationship.
Right.
These women, however, they happen to know, because when you put yourself last again and again and again, you pay the price, and our bodies pay the price. That's what happens.
Body keeps the score.
The body keeps the score. Yeah. And loss of self. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to speak to that loss of self thing, that I have so many women come in and say, I don't know who I am.
Yes.
Like have totally, because of the adaptations and the accommodations and all of these things that we've been talking about. So I don't know where me is anymore, because I've neglected it so much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's like a slow chipping away. At first they're like, oh, I would never let somebody treat me like this. I would speak up all the time. And then it's like, but you know what? Every time I did, he or she got more angry with me, or every time I did, he or she would
Not
be
worth it, right? It's not worth it. That's the line. It's not worth it.
I got
It'll just be easier. It'll be easier if I just don't say anything.
Exactly. And then, but imagine day by day, week by week, month by month, year by year, that's a slow chipping of yourself. And then you wake up and you're like, who the hell am I? Like, I'm not this person. I'm a shell of who I was. And when you have healthy self-esteem, you don't let those chips go, right? And you might let them go on one day, but on average, you are far more standing up for yourself, and it's not a steady letting go of yourself, and what you want and what you need. It just, because you know that you deserve it. You deserve to be treated well. And I think women struggle with that. And, we have so many messages coming at us to tell us we're not, including, lower pay. And I mean, there's 1,000 things.
1,000 things.
Okay, so how do we change it? What are some of the things, where can women start? If they're making these mistakes, they're noticing, wow, okay, I'm actually not having my back. I'm not owning my worth day to day. What the hell do I do? Where do I start?
Well, I think you start first with noticing all the negative self-talk. That's got to be the first step, because that definitely keeps you down.
Yeah.
I think it's noticing it, and then like saying another message.
Yeah.
One thing, you got to notice it. You go, wow, that wasn't very nice, what I just said to myself. I wouldn't say that out loud to my friend, or that kind of thing. And then it's kind of like, well, what would I say to myself instead?
Right.
And
yeah,
I think it's hard to know that.
The rule is, if you wouldn't say it to your best friend, you don't get to say it to yourself. And there's 1,000 things. I mean, I just think of myself, what I've said through the years. I'm fat. Oh my gosh, look at me. I'm why am I not so smart? Like there's just 1,000 things women say. I'm stupid. I don't, know anything. I'm, indecisive. I'm fat. I'm ugly. I'm whatever.
I'm not very nice. I'm critical. I'm angry. I'm unhappy.
Yeah. I'm a bitch. I'm I'm a
A
nag.
bitch.
I'm a
Bitch.
yeah. Yeah.
I'm not good enough because, fill in
Right.
the blank.
Right.
Yeah, so I thought it would be a good thing to just make a list of all the things you hear in your head about yourself.
Yeah.
Make that list and then read it and see if you actually believe all those things are true.
Right.
Get a little distance from it, because I think most of the time we hear those voices, we don't even question them. We just assume that they are the truth. But that's reality, that what we hear in our heads is really who we are.
Right. Right.
Yeah, and I think part of that makes it hard is because I think sometimes people go, well, but that's true. And it's kind of like the part that we think as women that it's true is because of the role of patriarchy, as we talked about it, misogyny, the socialization, everything in our culture, our family upbringing, not just the covert ways, but the overt ways that we have been taught that there's something wrong with us, that we're not enough.
And then I would say, if you heard your daughter saying that to herself, what would you say?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Or your best friend or your sister, right? So how we treat ourselves is by far worse than the way we would treat anybody that we love.
Yeah. And I also would say stop the comparisons. Stop comparing yourself to, your best friend or your mother or your sister or whoever. Just stop the comparisons. You look at you and you figure out, look, do I like what I'm doing? Am I in integrity? Am I, standing behind who I am? Let me just deal with that. And as long as you are in your own lane and you're doing what you want to be doing and you're, being relational to the world as the world should be to you, you're good. But stop the comparisons, because they're gonna take you out every time.
So stay on your side of the street and
Yeah.
be with integrity with yourself.
Yeah. And the other thing around being conscious is pay attention to the messages of patriarchy, pay attention to the messages of misogyny, pay attention to what your religion is telling you about women, pay attention to what your family has told you about women, and really start questioning, does that fit for me? Is that true for me? Does that does it feel good for me? Right. And really start questioning a little bit more, start getting conscious a little bit more. You don't need to just robotically play by old rules.
And then when you get that feeling like this doesn't feel good to me, give that a moment, give that some space.
Yeah.
Don't just shove it aside the way your feelings have been shoved aside by others. You now give yourself that time and space to value what your experience is.
I love that, Arlene. Don't just shove your feelings aside like others do. I love that. Honor yourself enough.
Yeah, we have to undo all the damage, some
Yeah.
of the damage that's been done by treating ourselves differently than the way we've been treated. Because if we don't, we're just going to teach other people to treat us in the same way we've always been treated. So that's how we break. That's how we break those patterns.
Yeah.
Also, in terms of that sense of trusting yourself, I think that, the like you get this sense like you're around somebody or somebody says something or does something, and the proverbial, the hair goes up in the back of your neck, and you're a little like, something doesn't seem right about this. But then you talk yourself out of your own feeling, which was like this is your instinct, your intuition, your whatever, but it says pay attention. And we have to believe in ourselves enough to know that something is amiss, something is not right here, if I am going to pay attention and trust myself about that.
Yeah. I one of the things I tell my clients, and I had in the book, was tune in, tune out. Tune into you, tune out the world. what women tend to do is we tune into the world and we tune out ourselves. And so tune into you. What do I think? What do I believe? Does this feel right to me? Does it not feel right to me? And stop worrying about what the world's going to say and what they're going to think and how they're going to respond. First, we just got to get everybody the hell out of our heads and just figure out where you land. And then you can start from there. Too much. We've got everybody else in our heads so much that there's no room for us. And so you got
one of my old teachers always used to say, just check in with yourself.
Yeah.
Just check in with yourself.
Yeah. Love that. All right. So let's talk about challenges. What do we want to do? Challenges for the women, and then a challenge for the men who want to help the women in their lives rise and the women in our world rise. What's the challenge for the women?
So I think for the women, kind of through all of this, we've been talking about what's going on between your two ears, what's in your head, and especially this idea of self-talk. And so it's this kind of idea that we talked about. If you wouldn't say it to your best friend, don't say it to yourself. But it is beginning to write down, what do I say to myself? Because we have to understand that part first. And then what I think is a super challenge, I just love this challenge, is to choose a self-esteem buddy. And each week you would share the 3 worst things you each had said about yourself, and then you help each other come up with more positive, encouraging self-worth statements to correct those negative self-talk kind of things. And then also with this person, for each of you to share with each other 2 positive qualities or strengths about the other person.
And did we just say 3 negative and 2 positive? Did we just really say that?
Let's do 3 positives. 3 negatives, 3 positives. That's a great catch.
3 positive, 4 positives, and 3 negatives.
Yeah. Just to give them an example of how this might play out. So if I was talking to Dee and I said, okay, here are my 3 things. And one of my 3 things that I said to myself is, oh my gosh, I'm so fat. Then Dee's going to help me fix that. And and you're not going to go to, oh, you're so skinny, Lisa, right? We're not going to lie, but she can, she can help it. And she might say, what if you said, oh, I wish I could lose, I'd like to lose 10 pounds.
Right? I have a goal of losing 10 pounds.
Right.
That would feel good to me. Right.
And so that's how that's going to work. So you're going to,
it's more like a reframing it.
Yeah.
Reframe the feeling underneath and put it in a much more, in a more positive, self-affirming language.
Right. You want it so that you have warm regard for yourself and how you're speaking to yourself. So that's how that's going to play out. Okay.
I think we just came up with a new idea. I never heard the self-esteem buddy. Is that a new thing we just came up with? Have a self-esteem buddy?
We just came up. See how smart we are?
Fantastic. I love that. Self-esteem buddy. My God. Everybody should have one.
Yeah. Well, I love it because it's like exercise is easier when you do it with somebody else. And this is the same thing with self-esteem.
Absolutely.
And with your self-esteem buddy, have conversations about the messages what you're seeing in the world and start kind of challenging those. All right, for men, challenge for men. Arlene, you want to do it or you want me to do it?
Go, you start. I'll chime in as I remember the things that we discussed.
So the challenge for men is really, if you want to help the women in your life to rise, one of the things we want you to do is we want you to trust the authority of the women in your life just as much as you trust the authority of the men, right? If a man said something and you would just take it, and your wife says something or your mother or your sister, take it just like you would if it was a man. And then the other thing is get conscious about all the ways you mansplain, you second guess the women in your life, you dismiss them, or you tell them you're being too sensitive or that's extreme. All those different ways that you kind of undercut women and aren't even aware. So get conscious of that and then give them the same authority as you would give any other male in your life.
Yeah, I think you said that well. I don't think I have anything to add to that.
Okay.
One thing I would add, I think you got it down, I would just want to make the men supporting the women in their lives aware of the fact that often a woman will say something and they'll say, "Are you sure?"
Mm-hmm. Right.
And this would be one of those times. If you wouldn't say, "Are you sure?" to one of your male friends, then you wouldn't be saying that to your partner, your mother, your sister, whoever.
So just become aware of, not like the men are not even conscious of the impact of patriarchy on them.
Yes.
Yes,
So
that would be a great podcast.
Yeah.
Because I'm seeing men, I hate what we're doing to men. The patriarchy is killing them, and they're losing marriages because of it. It's heartbreaking, really. But
I agree with that.
That's a whole different podcast.
That's a whole lot, yeah. We have to finish self-esteem first.
Yes.
And we didn't get onto that. But I think you're right. I think men suffer in a different way, but they suffer terribly from it.
Oh, they really do.
So
They
dehumanizing. Really, it's very dehumanizing.
It really is. It really is. All right. So everybody have great 3 weeks. If you have questions on any of these, if you are trying some of the challenges or any of the things that we are talking about in these podcasts, if you're giving it a go, please, please, please let us know. How's it going? Where'd you get stuck? Where'd you succeed? What worked? What didn't? We'd love to hear from you. We'd absolutely love to hear from you.
And if you have any other questions or issues that you want us to address, please let us know. We would love that too. Anything that's going on that relates to how you feel as a woman in this world, we're open to talking about it.
Mm-hmm. We are absolutely open. So contact us, let us know. Pass this, if you like this podcast, please pass it on to your friends. And stay healthy. Stay healthy, everybody.
Stay healthy. Yeah. Safe and healthy.
Safe and healthy. Take care.
Take care. Bye, everybody. Bye.
Thank you again for joining us this week. And always remember, you have the power to change the world for women by changing how you walk in it. I challenge you to choose one way to stand in your grounded, powerful strength this week and be part of the ripple of change.